Hey guys, Nick with you. How do you do? This video is going to go over making a Hamon in a knife. So I've got two knives here. They're pretty much the same style. They're just Debas. They're kitchen knives. They're off the same pattern, but of course they're just a tiny bit different, as all knives are. To start off with, I forged the blade, then I ground it down to the shape I want, and this is at 180 grit right now. It's not very high, but this is as high as I go before heat treat. So I go up to 180 grit, and then before I do anything else, I clean it off with just some rubbing alcohol on just a clean rag. Just pour some on there and just wipe the whole blade down. So just wipe the whole blade down so you get all the grease off of it. And I usually just hold it by the back, because it's okay back here because none of the clay or anything is going to be up here. So just wipe it down all around, and that's the first step basically. And the second step, let it dry and get yourself some high heat furnace cement. This stuff works okay if you can find it at your local store, but the best thing to use that I found is called Satanite. It's just like a kind of like a clay powder. It's used to go on the inside of forges and coat them so they the ice or KO wool doesn't melt, because this has a higher temperature rating than KO wool. So you get some of this and get yourself a little paper cup and a little measuring device, and then it doesn't take a lot of water. It doesn't take a lot of Satanite to do one blade. So let me go get some water, and we can actually measure it out, see how much it takes. So I measured out the Satanite first, and it looks like we have about 75 milliliters, about 2 fluid ounces. So intermediate step, I forgot to add before we add the water and stuff, is to make a scribe line on the blade. I'm gonna put it about maybe a ½ inch up, right from the edge. To give you a line, I doubt you can see it, I'll draw it on with a marker real quick, about how far you should put the Satanite up. So you do that on all 4 sides, or on all 2 sides of the blade. That'll give you a line. Let's see if we can focus here. It'll give you a line that you can put the Satanite up to and be even on both sides. Okay, so I've got all the scribe lines on. What I'm going to do now, I'm just going to add some water to the Satanite. Again, we have 75 milliliters of Satanite in here, and I have about 100 milliliters of water. Now I doubt it will take a lot. It does not take a lot of water for the Satanite to get all to the right consistency. I've just got a popsicle stick. Just gonna mix it around until it's about the consistency of maybe yogurt, that kind of consistency, a yogurty, kind of melty ice cream consistency. And I want to get all the way to the bottom, mix it up. As you can see, there's still a lot of water in there. There's still a lot of dry spots in it. So I probably used 25 milliliters of water. So very, very little water compared to the amount of Satanite that's in here. And then, again, I'm still getting dry chunks, so still gonna stir this up. So it's about a 3-to-1 ratio of Satanite to water that you want. And then you're just gonna start coating the blade up to that line on each side with a layer of Satanite. You don't want it real thick. Oops. You want to try and get it evenly over that line. And I come back a little far into the handle and get it good and covered. Because the way I do a full quench rather than just an edge quench, and I want it to be protected up here. So on both sides, get that Satanite on. I'm just going to go along that line to begin with. And just coat it real thinly. All the way up the blade. Then remember to get the spine of the blade, because you want that protected from the heat as well, or insulated with heat. You want to protect it from cooling down too fast. That's actually what happens. Is the Satanite acts as an insulating layer, so that the steel up here cools down slower than the edge steel. So the edge steel is going to completely transform into martensite, whereas this is going to stay martensite, ferrite, perlite, and some cementite, as well as bantonite. So get down here too, but basically anywhere that you don't want heated. So I'm just going to draw some extra lines into the Hamon on each side. These will be kind of random. Just to try and give it some waviness to the blade, to the Hamon. So now that you have the blade covered, what you can do is put it into an oven at about 200 degrees and let the water evaporate from it. That'll make this clay hard and make it able to be put into the forge. So I'm going to do that with this one right now, and then do the same thing with the other one, and I'll show you them in the oven. Stay tuned. So I got the blades in the oven, and I put them out about 250 degrees, and just for maybe 20 minutes, 30 minutes, maybe an hour to get all the water out. And then I'll show you them after that. They'll be all nice and cooked. Basically, the inside of a forge, at least my forge, is covered in Satanite, and that's what happens. It turns into this color. and it gets pretty hard. So I want to talk about the steel choice for these blades. What those blades are 1095, and you want a steel that's going to harden quickly, or a shallow hardening steel, like 1095 or maybe W2, W1, and I've used this 80 CRV2, and I got a nice Hamon out of that. But something like 1095 or W2 are going to give the best results for a Hamon. I've done it in 1084, but it's not as striking as the 1095 stuff is. And also, for the quench medium, I'm using Parks 50 in this little plastic container thing. Basically, Parks 50 is a very, very fast quench oil, and you want something that's going to quench fast to get the best Hamon. I definitely do not recommend water, just because, like, I don't know what the percentage is, but a high percentage of your blades are going to crack. Even if you have it at the perfect temperature, 1450 for 1095 and whatever the temperature is for W1 or whatever steel you're using, it's still a very, very harsh quench. What this does is it gets it down beneath the nose of the curve, the C curve, and then it cools it. It gets it down to maybe 600 to 800 degrees maybe, and then it cools slower than the first part of the quench cycle, so that it gives a fast quench to get around the nose of the curve, but then it slows down to give the steel as much room, as much time as possible to not crack, but still get the 100% martensite transformation. So Parks 50, I got it from Maxim Oil. You have to call them up and get it. You get it in like a 5-pound pail. That's what. Still have probably 4.5 gallons in there, and then the rest in here. And that's the best stuff you can get for knife making. So once they come out of the oven, the Satanite is pretty hard. It's not going to fall off or drip down or anything. So after this point, it's ready to go into the forge and be hardened. So I just numbered these. Just 1 and 2, and I put a little scribe underneath it so because the mark will burn off, so that I know which one's which. And that's just as a reference point. I take pictures of both sides before I quench it, so that I can compare the Satanite line to the Hamon line. So that's just a reference for me to try and improve how I do the Hamons. So guys, I'm ready for the heat treat. I wait until it's night so I can turn off the lights and get a true color to when I'm heating up the blade. Basically what I'm going to do, just stick it in, put it in and out until it heats up to critical temperature, then pull it out and normalize it. Basically what that does is it makes all the steel the same, and then heat it up back to critical, and then come over here and quench it in the oil. I have my thermocouple ready so I can tell what temperature I'm at. I don't do it purely on color yet. That's something that I would like to learn. So I'm using the thermocouple and the color of the blade, or the color of the thermocouple and the color of the blade at the same time to try and get the perfect temperature. So I'm not sure if the camera will pick up anything when I turn the lights off. That's why I'm explaining it right now. I'm I'm going to try and get some shots of me quenching the blade and maybe heating the blade up. But if nothing shows up, that's why I'm explaining to you what I'm doing right now. I'm going to heat it up, in and out, normalize it, wait for it to cool all the way back down. Then back in the forge, heat it up to critical, come over here, quench it. I'm just going to do a full quench, just go straight down. You could do an edge quench, which might make it more dramatic, but I don't have a good way to do that right now. So I'm just going to do full quench it and be done with it. So let me set. So immediately after I hardened them, I scraped off all the clay, and then I put them in the tempering oven. Right now it's going up to 400 degrees. It says 357 right now. As you can see right here, it says 425. If you have one of these for tempering, don't go on that temperature. Go on something like a thermocouple or something to have an actual accurate temperature, because mine's about 25-30 degrees off. So right now it's tempering, and after I temper it, begins the polishing process. So this is just at 80 grit. I just etched one of them so you can see how it's going along. So it's just 80 grit, very coarse. You can see that none of the Hamon is very distinct because of how high a grit this is. So I'm gonna do basically 120 on the grinder, 180 on the grinder, then 200, and then go back down to start hand sanding. So I'll show you at each step. I'll just I have these set up the same way they were in before, and I'll show you at each step how it's coming along. Here's the 120 grit. You can kind of see up here, even at this low grit, where the Hamon is going to be, even without etching it. Here's the blade at 200 grit off the grinder. You can see that the Hamon is much clearer now, much sharper lines. So I have this little jig that I made for hand sanding. It's just a steel block with a bunch of screws under here, and then on top is a piece of whiteboard, and I can adjust the whiteboard up and down to support the entire length of the blade because of the distal taper up to the tip. So I can just turn these however much I need, and it'll raise or lower, and it'll be supported all the way under the blade. So after that, I just get a little stick with some sandpaper and just go back and forth until all the sanding lines go in the same direction. So here's the first knife with hand sanded. This is just 120 grit hand sanded, and already you can tell a lot better how the Hamon shows just on plain steel. And that's just 120 grit. And here's the other one at 200 grit etched. So the hand sanding is definitely a very important part, or at least getting all the ground lines from the tip of the blade to the handle. It makes the Hamon just pop. So I'll continue polishing. I'll probably go up to 600 or 1200 grit, and I'll show you it then. So once I have the blade sanded, I'm at the first grit. This is a 120 grit, and once it's all in the same direction, tip to tail on the blade. This is a good, usually when I take it and start shaping out the handles, like drill holes through it, because if you scratch up the blade now, you can correct it, whereas if you scratch it up later with the higher grits, you're gonna have to go all the way back down and do it. So it's just easier to do it now and do the front and do the holes, and then once everything's done, epoxy it on and then do the sides. So the front of the handles and then the holes. That's what I do at 120 grit. So usually I'll just sand the front of it so I can I'll sand it all the way up and etch it, and then epoxy the handles on, and then I'll do the outside. But you have to do the front, otherwise you'll scratch up the blade. So I do the front and then epoxy it and then sand the rest of the sides off so that the spine will be polished, and then the faces of the blade will be etched. When you get to the end of a grit, what I usually do is do draw strokes, so that when you're doing this motion, you'll get little starts and swirls because you're stopping and starting right there. So usually I just, once I get to the last two folds, I just do a draw stroke, keep doing draw strokes. So I put it back behind where the handle's going to be, so that the stop and starts that I do right here just get covered, and then just draw. And I do this to the last two folds with the sandpaper, and then I can move on to a higher grit. So right now I usually start doing that with a 320. I'm at 320 right now. Then I'll go up to a 400 and 600 and then 1000, 1200 grit. And at the end of each one, I'll do this so that all the lines on the blade are going the same way. There's no swirls, marks, or anything. They all go the same way, and they all look really nice. So just keep doing that until I'll go to 600, and then I'll bring you back. So once I get to 600 grit, I move over, I do the 600 grit, and then I move to a buffer with green compound and white compound. So I got green over there and white over here. I buff it on both. Then I'll etch it. Then I go up to 1200 grit, polish the blade with 1200 grit, and then do buffing again. Then etch it, then buff it, and then keep doing that until I get the finish that I want. So it's real easy to buff, but if you get the blade like this with a sharp corner into the wheel, it'll grab it and just throw it down. So remember to wear your safety glasses, and if you have long sleeves, pull them up, because you don't want anything getting caught in here. It's probably the most dangerous machine that I have. So when I'm using the buffer, I have to clamp down and usually I'll move it like this, up and down, but not hitting this part. When I get to right here on the blade, I'll turn it like this so that it's not going to catch on anything. So I'm ready to etch for the first time at 600 grit. What I'm using is ferric chloride in water. It's not. I think it's 1 part ferric chloride to 5 parts water, something like that. So you want to dilute it. If you use just straight ferric chloride, it just gets too gunked up on the blade to be really useful. So what I do, I clean the blade with the alcohol first, and then try not to touch it, at least where you're gonna etch it up in the blade part. So I just dip it in, swirl it around for a couple seconds, and you'll see it come out almost immediately. But usually I like to rinse it off, or just let it drain off and then dip it back in. Do that a couple times. So that's really all it is to etching, is just dip it in, come out. So with the 1200 grit, what I usually do is take some simple green, just have it in a Windex bottle. I spray it onto the actual paper instead of onto the blade, and then I just do draw strokes. So just set it there and do draw strokes. This will erase the previous etch. But one reason I do the etch at 600 grit is to see exactly where the sanding marks are going, so that I know if I'm actually missing anything. So I just continue this on both sides of the blade. Then I go back to the buffer, buff it again with the green compound, white compound, and then I'll etch it again. And then I'll bring you back after that. So here's the blade after 1200 grit and a buffing with green and white compound. You can see that the Hamon shows really quite well, even without an etching on both sides. And so from this, basically, I know I touched the blade, but you can use Windex or alcohol, wipe it off so that there's no oil on it from your hands, and then get your acid. And what's going to happen is when you dip that knife in the acid, it'll etch, but there'll also be an oxide layer that is created. So by stirring it around, you kind of knock some of it off. But the best way to do it is just to wipe it off, at least for the first etch, a couple edges. So that's really all you're going to get with if you just stick it in there. So what I do is take it out, shake it off, and in here I just have some water, some hot water, and baking soda. And that'll just basically quench it, stop the reaction that's going on. It's just this is a basic solution, that's an acidic solution, so they cancel each other out. So wash it off, and then take a clean rag and wipe the blade off. You can see that this gets dirty. That's the oxide layer that you want to take off so you can etch it even deeper. So just keep wiping it off. Get everything off, get all the baking soda water off. clean it real hard, and then just go back into the acid. And then do that just a couple times, and I'll show you the next step. So here the knives are after I've etched them. So I just wiped them down after I've etched them with just the baking soda and the rag, and then simple green and a rag. But there's still oxides on the blade. So what you can use to get that off, sometimes you can use just literally an eraser. Just an eraser, and just go to town. Try and go in the same direction, and that'll get a lot of the oxides off. You can see it gets kind of dirty. Or you can also use this kind of soap that has pumice in it, like Gojo. This is called Fast Orange, and this stuff has pumice in it, so you won't be able to see it, but I can feel it. There are little kind of bits of sand in it. You just rub it along up and down the blade, and it'll get dirty because it's taking off that oxide layer. So once you do that, it'll basically be done. So let me go to town on this and clean it up, and then I'll show you how I put the handles on. So after I've etched them and cleaned them up with the Gojo and the eraser, I'm gonna put the handles on. So I want to protect this finish, so all you have to do is take a couple pieces of duct tape. I usually go up right to the end of the right here, right back here. And then back here, I'll use masking tape so that I can peel the masking tape off after I put the epoxy on, so I don't get any, or at least I get very little epoxy squeeze out right here. So I take the tape off, and then I'll rub it down with a piece of something with alcohol on it. But I usually do 3 to 4 layers of duct tape on each side, and that'll give you enough thickness to be able to make a Kydex sheath without the Kydex sheath scratching up the blade. So 3 or 4 layers of duct tape on each side, up to about here, and that's really it to protect it. And then I'll show you what I'm going to do after that. So I epoxied the handles to the blade, and you can see there's epoxy that's got squeezed out, and the pins need to be sanded down. So I'm just going to sand those down and get the epoxy off, and basically the spine of the blade will be polished, and I'll just polish that up to maybe 320, 400 grit, and that'll be good for the spine of the blade. So once I have this handle shaped, for the most part, I'll usually go up to a 180 grit, shaping the handles. And because I didn't go that high on the actual metal before I put the handles on, I had to go back down to 100 grit and just sand all the grind marks that were perpendicular to the from the tip to the tail. So any grind marks that were this way, I had to get rid of. So a lot of sanding just back and forth, so that all the sanding marks are in the same way. So especially if you have like a part like right here, always remember to go up and catch that part so that everything looks the same and it all looks good. So for this, I'm going to go up to a 300 grit or 320 grit sandpaper, and then I'll finish it there. It's still etched on the spine in the up here. So once I get the 320 grit here, I'll move the 320 grit all the way up and down the blade so that it's all even and it all looks the same. So if you happen to get any scratches on the blade while you're making the handle or polishing the edge. I actually did that with while I was making the Kodak sheath. I actually got a scratch right here. So what I did, I just took some acid, I wore a glove and just spread it around on the face so it didn't get on the spine. I spread it around, and then I went, I washed it off with some Simple Green, and then I just did the Gojo and then the eraser, and it's back to tip-top finish. So here are the finished blades. If you remember the numbers, this one was number 1 and this one was number 2. I'll compare those in pictures at the very end. And so here are the final blades. Let's zoom in here so you can see the Hamon. This one has Purple Heart wood on it, with 1095 steel. With the handle, I did a tung oil finish, so I sanded it to 220 and then did 2 coats of tung oil and let that dry. With the Purple Heart, it'll get more purple over time. So right now, it usually, when you just sand it, it usually looks brown, reddish, and it'll get purple, more purple over time. So this one I did a maple handle. Same thing. I did a 2 coatings of tung oil on it. Maybe there you go. As you can see, the whole of the spine is polished at 320 grit all around, with all the grind lines going the same way. Fits good in the hand. Cuts very well. The last clip you saw, I saw sharpening these on the grinder. Usually I just do a little primary edge right then, and then I go to stones and finish the edge with stones. So let's see how close I can get to with focusing. And I'll show you one last time the Hamon, how it came out. I think it came out very beautifully. Very well defined. You see the ashy right there. I really like how these came out. And here's the other one. That's a bit of oil right there. I have to wipe it off. So thanks for watching this full video. That was a long one, but hopefully you guys got some information out of it. Yeah, so remember, keep your knife sharp, mind sharper. I'm Nick with 2. If you're interested in these blades or any of my other blades, go to woometalworks.com. Link will be in the description. And thanks for watching, guys.